Hey traders, welcome back to another video. In this video, I want to demonstrate how to calculate your Forex market position size in terms of lots when testing scripts through the TradingView backtester system. So in this video, I'm going to be building on the script we created in the previous video. If you haven't watched that video, I'll leave a link in the video description. But this is basically a MACD crossover system. It's pretty simple. We're just buying crosses of the MACD signal line below the 0 point while trading above or below this 200 period moving average. It's not a super advanced system, but it is profitable on a few markets. So over 360 trades, about 44% of our trades closed for a profit. And we made a 38% return over those 360 trades. So there's something to this system. It's quite interesting. But one issue we have is that we are calculating our position size in terms of units. Now, some brokers will allow you to trade in increments of a single unit. So Oanda or Oanda is a good example of that. They're a Forex broker that allows you to trade any position size you want in terms of the lot sizing. But most brokers will have a system where you can only trade standard lots, mini lots, or nano lots. And each of those different baskets of position sizing are basically increments of 1,000 units. So a nano lot is 1,000 units, a mini lot is 10,000, and a standard lot is 100,000 units of whatever currency you're trading. But you can see here that this script is trading increments that do not match that lot sizing system. So for many brokers, trading 32,530 units may not be possible. And so our backtesting results are going to be slightly inaccurate to what is realistic or what can be realistically achieved in real life, given the fact that many brokers don't allow this position sizing format. So today's lesson is going to show you how to do this. I've already done it, obviously, to prove it's possible. If I turn this option here, use lots instead of units on, these numbers here will change. There we go. You can see now that we are trading 33,000 units, which is the closest equivalent to that initial risk, but in terms of lot sizes. So this would be 33 mini lots. And then we close out 8 mini lots, which is a quarter of our position. And then the remainder of our position gets closed at our second profit target here. So before we begin, I've created a really simple example script here that goes over the pseudocode and the math behind this solution. And before I even get into that, I should mention that in case you haven't noticed, the TradingView team have changed the PineScript editor dramatically. It's very different to what it used to be like. I'm still getting used to it myself. There are some things I really like about it and some things I don't like at all, but I'm sure we'll get used to it over time. But anyway, let's break down the code to this example math for lot sizing in PineScript. So the first thing we need to do is get our position size in units. So for this little example script, I just have a user input where we can just input the position size just to test the code. In a real script, this is where you would place in your actual position size calculation based on your stop loss, the distance from your entry to your stop loss, and so on. But for now, let's just focus on the theory behind this solution. So if I open up the settings here, we have 2,164 units or 2.1 mini lots. What we need to do in order to get this as a lot size is we need to divide this into increments of 100,000. And now I've got a function here that I'll cut out just temporarily, and we'll add that back in later because I don't want to confuse people. Let's just keep it really simple for the moment. So we're getting our units, and now we need to convert these into lot format. So to do that, we need to divide our units amount by 100,000 or one standard lot. So in this case, if I bring over my calculator, 2164 divided by 100,000 gives us 0.02164. So now that pretty much gives us our position size in lots. So if I open up my window here for trading or placing orders, if I put in a stop loss, it doesn't matter where my stop loss is. But if I set my risk to 1%, you can see that I don't quite get a flat 1% risk here because my position size has been rounded down or to the closest mini lot amount. So in this case, that's 0.19 lots or 19 mini lots. And that gets me as close as possible to 1% risk based on a 46 pip stop loss. Now, global prime say 460 pips, but it's actually 46 pips. It's 460 points in this case, but that's not relevant. So just ignore that for now. 46 pip stop loss, 0.96 risk is as close as we can get to 1% risk using the lot sizing system. So what I need to do with this number is I need to get rid of these decimal places, because if I open this back up, I can't type in 0.95. I can only put 2 digits in here. Specified amount is not a multiple of the instrument quantity step of 0.01. So we need to round our 0.02164 number down to 2 decimal places. Fortunately, that's really easy and simple to do in PineScript. We can just use the math.round function. So we reassign our lots variable to math.round lots to 2 decimal places. And that will give us 0.02 in this case, since we'll be rounding down. If this was to 674 or something like that, this might get rounded up to 0.03. If you want to make sure that this number always gets rounded down instead of up, you'll need to use a different function than the math.round function. Basically, you need to use a truncate function that just strips off all of those decimal places regardless of whether it should round up or down. One way to do that is to use my Zen library. If you import my Zen library and give it an alias, and we type in zen.truncate, this will cut the excess decimal places off any given number. So if I pass that in there and replace math.round lots with my truncate function, and now while we're here, you can see this is turned purple because it's a library function. That's one cool new feature about the new PineScript editor that I do like. I like how it differentiates between PineScript's inbuilt functions and custom functions and libraries. But anyway, if I save this script now and I open up the settings menu and change this number to 2764, this should still round down to 2000 units. There we go. But if I change this back to math.round lots to 2 decimal places and save the code, this same number will round up to 3000, because the number we're getting when we divide by 100,000 is 0.027. And when we're rounding to 2 decimal places, that obviously gets rounded up to 0.03. But if you don't want that to happen, you'll need to use a truncate function like the one I've created here. And by default, this function truncates to 2 decimal places, but you can also specify the amount of decimal places you want to strip a number down to. But anyway, for today's example, so that we're not dealing with too many moving parts and complexity, I'm just going to leave the standard round math.round function as the way we strip those decimal places off. Now, once we have our position size as lots rounded down to 2 decimal places, in this case 0.02, that is the position size we would be sending to our broker normally. Under normal circumstances, if we were to take a trade and our position size in the strategy tester told us to buy or sell 2,164 units, when we enter our position in our broker, we would actually type in 0.02 lots, since that is the closest value or position size we can send to our broker based on this number. To tell the strategy tester to take trades with a position size based on this format, this lot size format, so that we get a more accurate backtest output, we need to convert this number back into units, because the strategy tester only works in units, at least on Forex. So the way to do that is just to simply multiply this number we have by 100,000, which will convert it back into lots as its equivalent in units. So what that will give us is this number here, 3,000 units based on a position size of 2,764 units. If we were to input this math into a strategy script and use this number as our position size, that's how we get the strategy tester to take trades based on lot sizes. So to wrap up this video, let's cut this code out and put it into the strategy script that we created in the previous video. Now, before I do that, I'll show you that there is a slightly simpler way to do all of this, and that's using a custom function. So now if I get rid of all of this, we now do everything I just showed you. But before we continue, there is a cleaner way to go about this, and that's using a custom function. So I can get rid of all of this code here, paste in my custom function. And now this function here will do what we just did, but it's a little bit tidier. It's all kept within a custom function. You could add this to a library and import that library into all of your scripts, your strategy scripts. And then you have a convenient way to quickly convert units into lots. And I need to get rid of that int keyword there. That way we can pass in floats and integers into this function. So now if I save that code, we'll be getting the exact same thing. So now what we can do is we can cut this custom function, copy this out. I can get rid of this script. I don't need it anymore. I'll get rid of the MACD as well, since we don't need that on the screen. It's just adding more clutter. Now, if I open up the source code to the script we created in the previous video, again, I won't explain too much about this script since I've already done that in the previous video. Go and watch that if you haven't already, where I explain how we built this script. But basically, this script already calculates our position size for Forex as units. Now we can just copy and paste that function into this script. So I'll paste it below our user inputs. So here is the custom function. Now what I need to do is, first of all, I'll add a user input here below this Forex risk per trade percentage input. I'll just copy this line of code over. This is just a Boolean input that we can turn on or off. And this will tell this script to use lots instead of units. So if you're trading through a broker like Oanda, you can turn this off since you can actually trade this position size. But if you're trading through a different broker that uses lots, you'll need to turn this on when you're backtesting. So now that we have our user input switch and our custom function, all that's left to do is convert the position size that gets calculated in this block of code here into lots. So I've got a separate video on how this code works here. But basically this code takes into account the conversion rate between your base currency. So in this case, for me, that's Aussie dollars on this account that I'm using as an example. So when I'm trading US yen in Aussie dollars, I need to convert my position size based on the exchange rate between the quote currency on this symbol. And that's what this code here does. And if I scroll down to where our positions get entered, here we are, long trade and short trade. You can see that I use my custom library function here. AV stands for auto view, and auto view is a Forex auto trading plugin for Chrome that you can use to auto trade trading view scripts. That's why I originally created the code that I'm using to calculate this position size for the Forex markets. But this method applies to testing as well. So this can work for the strategy tester as well as real live auto trading through AutoView. And for today's example, what we need to do is convert this position size value from units into lots before we pass it into our entry function. So to do that, I can use a ternary or conditional operator here to say, is input underscore use lots turned on? If this is true, then we want to convert our units to lots and pass in our position size. Otherwise, we just want to use our position size as units. So again, this is a bit confusing, especially if you're new to Pine. But what we're saying here is we're saying set the quantity of this position we're entering, the position size quantity should be set to is use lots turned on. If so, set it to units converted into lots using our custom function we pasted earlier. Otherwise, if use lots is not turned on, then just pass in the position size as it is. And now we need to do the same thing for our short entry. So I'll just copy and paste some code over there to save time. It's exactly the same formula. And that's it. We are now entering our positions based on lots if this setting is turned on in the settings menu. So now if I save my code, we are nearly done. There's one last thing I want to explain before we wrap up the video, but just quickly, if I turn on use lots instead of units, this number here should change to a lot format in terms of units. So right there is 43 mini lots, or nearly half a full lot. But we now have a problem with our exit code. So normally if you're just using a one in, one out approach, so just one profit target, or if you're exiting based on a candle pattern, so you exit your full position based on a candlestick pattern or something like that, then you can stop watching the video here. You don't need to do anything else to your script. However, you can see that because we are taking two profit targets here, the first profit target is 25% of our initial position. The second one is the remaining 75%. We are telling the strategy tester to exit a position based on units still. So down here, 10,750 units, we can't send that to our broker. We can't send 0.1075 because our brokers only allow up to 2 decimal places. So what we need to do is, in this particular script, we need to change our exit code slightly. So down here is where our exits are made. Initially, all it does is exit based on a percentage of our open position. So I_target is this user setting here. So by default, when price hits our first target, we take off 25% of our position. So we exit 25% of our position from the entry called long based on if price hits our trade target or our trade stop for that matter. And then the second line here exits the remaining position, the remaining 100% of our position based on if price hits our second target or our stop loss. So what we need to do here, we can leave the second line. Exiting 100% of our remaining position is what we still want when our second target is hit. But our first target cannot be a percentage of our open position. We need to actually calculate that percentage of our open position and then convert that same number into lots. So to do that, to make it easier to read, there's plenty of ways we could do this, but for today's example, I'm going to create 2 new float variables. The first one is going to be called exit partial units. And this is going to be set to strategy.position_size divided by 100 divided by our first target percentage. So in this case, I target is 25 by default. And so 100 divided by 25 will give us 4. And so our position size will be divided by 4 in order to get a quarter. You could also multiply this. So you could just do I target divided by 100. So flip these around. That gives us 0.25. And then you could multiply that by our open position. So if we had 1,000 units open, that would close out 250 units. Either method should work fine. But that's what we're doing with this line of code. We are calculating the units we need to close out based on the user setting here of how much of our open position to exit on our first target when our first target is hit. Now, there's one problem with this line of code, and that is that the strategy tester, when it goes short, has a negative position size. So when we go short here, we actually have a negative 43,000 units open as our position. So what we need to do here is wrap this code in math.abs. The math.abs function is abs stands for absolute. It's short for absolute. And that will convert the given number within the parentheses here into a positive number. So if the number is already positive, it does nothing. If the number is negative, it turns it into a positive number. So in this case here, negative 43,000 would be converted into 43,000. And to get a quarter of 43,000, negative 43,000, and then it's going to divide that by 4. That gives us negative 10,750. And then the math.abs function will get rid of that negative sign and we'll have 10,750 units. But now we need to get rid of that 750 in order to convert this into lots. So to do that, I have a second float variable here that I will call exit partial lots. And that is going to be set to units to lots. And then we pass in our exit partial units variable from this line of code here. So we have our position size we want to exit as a percentage of our total position size in units. We then convert that into lots. Now what we can do is we can get rid of the percentage of our quantity parameter in our exit function. So exit_% equals 100 will exit 100% of our position. QTY or quantity is set to, now if I pass in our exit partial units, that will do the same thing as exiting. In this case, I target 1 is 25 by default. So this would be the same with the default settings. This would be the same as saying quantity percent equals 25. But now that we've converted them into units, what we can do is use a similar ternary operator as we did up here, down here. So we can say, is I_use lots turned on? If so, we want to use this quantity to exit our initial position, the initial percentage of our open position. Otherwise, if use lots is not turned on, then we just pass in the units version of our initial target. So I can copy this line of code down into this parameter as well. And now we're done. We have a script that is entering and exiting our positions based on lots as an equivalent of units. So I know it's a bit confusing, but if you look down here, we are now exiting 11,000 units instead of 10,750. And then we're exiting the remainder of our position, 32,000 units, when our second target gets hit by price action. Or in this particular trade, we actually exited for break even. So our first target was hit, our stop loss was moved to break even, and then the remainder of our position, since it didn't get hit by this wick, gets exited for break even, and we exit our 32,000 remaining units. And now the strategy tester is giving results based on what we would be getting if we were to trade this system on the Forex markets using lots instead of units. And if I come up to the settings menu and we turn this setting off, that will change our numbers, not dramatically, but it will change them slightly. So if you keep an eye on our returns here, 38.29% when we are trading in units. If I turn this on to lots, we get a slightly higher return, but probably a slightly higher max drawdown as well. That's because some positions are slightly greater than 1%, or whatever this setting is set to, and some positions are slightly smaller than 1%. Because, as I mentioned towards the start of this video, if, for example, I was to take this trade here, and I put my stop loss there and take profit there, create a limit order, and I set my risk to 1%, I actually can only get as close as 0.98%, which is 0.2 lots or 2 mini lots. So over time, over a few hundred trades, this slight percentage difference is going to make a noticeable but not significant difference to our strategy tester results. But as traders, we should always strive to get the most accurate backtesting results we possibly can. There are limitations to historical data and backtesting, but we can mitigate a lot of those limitations by simulating as closely as possible what our system would have done in the past had we been trading it. So a few of those things to consider is commission costs, slippage. We can know for certain in many cases what our commission would be. We don't know for certain what our slippage might be. That's an unknown factor we just need to account for in our system development and the theory and the conceptualization of what our system is possible or capable of. Anyway, that will do it for today's lesson. It's a little bit of a confusing one. I understand and I apologize. The reason it's a little confusing is because we're building on a previous lesson that was already quite complicated, building out this strategy script. But in future lessons, when we cover this material, I can link back to these two videos. We can build on this information. So whenever I create a Forex-based system to test through the strategy tester, we can copy and paste this block of code, this custom function, and basically our entry code here. So once we calculate our stop loss distance in pips, that's all we need to know in order to use all of that code we just went over that I can copy and paste. So we plug in our stop loss distance and the position size that is calculated based on that stop loss distance. We pass that information into these functions and these blocks of code that we can copy and paste into future scripts, and that will make our lives a lot easier. So what I might do is cut this code and I'll paste it in here. So we'll keep all of our Forex position sizing code in its own block of code that we can copy and paste into future scripts. And that will make things a lot easier in future lessons to build on this information. So what I also might do, since we only use my Zen library in this system to calculate the position size, I might cut this line of code out from where it is and I'll paste it down in here as well. And some of you might not be aware of this, but we can also add on a curly brace here and a close curly brace here. And now we can actually hide that entire block of code by just clicking on this little drop down box here if we want to. And now all of this code within these two comments can be pasted into future lessons and we can build on this. And what I also might do by the next video that I publish is I might put this custom function into my Zen library itself so that we can have that cut out. We'll import the next version of my Zen library when that's published, and we'll have that custom function ready to go without needing to include those 5 or 6 lines of code into our scripts every time we want to do this. Unfortunately, I can't put this code into a library, or I would have already, because you cannot use the request function, the security function in custom libraries. But anyway, that will do it for today's lesson. I will leave the source code to this modified script below in the video description. You can copy and paste all of this code into your Pine editor, and basically all you need to do is adjust your default strategy parameters based on whatever system you're trading and whatever market you are trading. Crypto, stocks, etc. will have different default strategy values. You'll need to change your user inputs based on the system you're trading. All of this can stay as it is, but this code here where we calculate the indicator values and our entry conditions and exit conditions, you'll need to change this to suit your system. And then when you enter your trades, you can pretty much copy and paste all of this code here. So perhaps in the next system that I break down in the next strategy video, we'll take everything we've learned here and build on that, build out some templates that we can copy and paste into future scripts and that sort of thing. But for now, I'll leave this video here. Hope you found it interesting and valuable, and I will speak with you in the next video. Take care, good luck with your trading, and have a great day.